So we've been talking about this organization called the Kansas City
Yes.
Underground.
Yep.
We don't talk about it a ton,
Right.
but it has been referenced
Yeah.
in a lot of our sermons, in a lot of our media.
Yeah.
So people in our church may have heard
Mhm.
this idea thrown around.
Yeah. Especially if you've been through Discipleship Pathway, we interact with a lot of their stuff, and their missionary pathway is kind of the document that we essentially, with their permission, stole and then adapted for our context and where we're at in our journey. And so, yeah, they've been hugely influential on us. Yeah.
And their whole thing is about doing like missional church versus
Yes.
traditional church, right?
Yeah, so they're a network of micro churches, which, the language we've used around here is missional community, but it's essentially the same thing. So a micro church is just a purposely like smaller and very specific type of church that can gather anywhere. And so when we've gone to different micro church conferences, we've seen robust online communities that were like, whoa, that's really cool how they're reaching these people who would never come through the doors of a church, right? There was one that meets in a burrito place. Like that's their church. They have it, and they started doing communion right there with chips and salsa. Some of you guys might not like that, but it sounds delicious. They've got meeting in living rooms and very focused on neighborhoods, and so they're basically like, hey, instead of trying to draw a bunch of people to one big church, let's launch ordinary missionaries out into the community to send them where only they can go. So now they've got this network of churches that's growing all over the Kansas City area. Part of what we're trying to do here is we still have this traditional thing that we're doing this Sunday morning and some programs that we do here, but we're also looking to launch missional communities to reach people that cannot be reached through a traditional church service. And we live in a community that only 32% of people say religion is important to me, and so they're just not going to show up on Sunday, and that's okay. That means if we want to bless this community, we've got to get use a different strategy. And so we've been really influenced by the Kansas City Underground and their micro church movement as a way for us to look at our context and how can we launch missional communities to reach neighborhoods and school boards and sports teams and all this stuff where church is actually happening. Just because we're not sitting in rows and hearing a sermon doesn't mean church isn't happening. One of the things that Kansas City and the missional movement that they're kind of connected with is really clear about is that what is the church? We overcomplicate it. It's not a programmed thing necessarily. A church is basically a group of people that regularly gather to worship, and so that could be as simple as prayer, Bible study. That's worship. It can be they're a community. They share life together. They support one another. They care about each other, and then they have a shared mission. It's hey, we met a young man who had a brother with a severe developmental disability, and he saw the home that his brother was in as the place where God was calling him to start a church, and he did it. And it was incredible to just hear a story about how God moved in that environment because there was a shared mission. A couple people started praying for this place, and eventually more and more people started getting involved, and eventually a church now exists in this home. It's really cool. And so we want to simplify church, and in some ways we want to take the pressure off. Like, if you're a real Christian, you'll be here every Sunday and you'll do this, this, and this, and this, and to say like, what, if you're out in the community and you're doing church out there, that's awesome. We're excited about that because you're going to be able to impact the lives of people that we won't on a Sunday morning. And so that's a long way of saying we're really excited about the building blocks that we have in place as we're equipping people to be on mission and to take simple steps of faith. But there is still a little bit of fuzziness as to like, well, what happens next and what should I be looking for? And so we've invited Brian and Brianna, they're two of the key leaders at Kansas City Underground, to come out here and to kind of put on a mini missional equipping conference for our people and maybe some other churches in the area that want to join us, because they're further along and they can share stories about how these things develop, not to make it a program,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because God works however he wants to work.
Mm-hmm.
So not to tell us do this, this, and this, and then success will happen, but more
Mm-hmm.
to say like, here's the simple steps of faith we took. Here's how God showed up. Here's some of the things you can be looking for. But to train us on some key skills and to help people really see. I think one of the biggest hurdles for a church like ours is, there's this idea that there are gifted people,
Mm-hmm.
pastors, maybe elders or whatever, and they're the ones who do ministry. Um, but in the New Testament, what we see is the same Holy Spirit is given to all who believe, and all are gifted, and all are called to ministry. And so, finding out what that looks like for each individual to say, like, the words that Kansas City uses, masterpiece mission. What is God? What skills, passions, gifts has He given me? That He wants me to step out in faith with and see who can I bless. And so October 25th and 26th, it's a Friday evening and a Saturday during the day. We will be hosting this conference, and they'll be taking us through some tools and some exercises and some prayer. And I'm really excited about it. I would love for everybody who calls FCC their home to be there, especially if you've been through Discipleship Pathway. This is a great way to say, like, maybe you're stuck and you're like, what's my next step? This is going to be a great launching point for that. But I'm so pumped to have them because we've been meeting with them on and off to just kind of talk about where we're at with our church so they can design something specifically for us and where we're at, coach our coaches as well. And it's going to be a great time. So, yeah, we're really looking forward to having them here.
Awesome. I'm excited.
Yeah.